Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we are tackling the cards that need to be nerfed. The past week and a bit, I've done a whole series on the champions that need to be buffed in some way, and so if you haven't watched those, go and check it out. But today we're just going to tackle those cards that need to be nerfed, and there's a few. Obviously, there is like a big elephant in the room that we will get to at the end. Yeah, let's dive in and see, what exactly these cards need, how these cards need to be changed. Now, I would say just before I do get into it that I think the most important thing is that we all can agree on which cards need to be nerfed. I think that that's much bigger than like the exact details. I will suggest things of how they need to be nerfed, but I think what's more important is that we all agree on like, yeah, that card needs a nerf, that card needs a nerf. I think that that would be overall like the main goal of this, really, because obviously Riot can test out the cards and the different changes themselves. I can't see what a certain champion is like when you change something, but Riot does have that option. So we'll leave it to them for the specifics. I will suggest specifics if I can speak, but I think identifying the cards is really what I'm after here. But with that said, let's dive straight in and get on to our first nerf. Right here, I have an imported list from Mobalytics itself of the most popular version of this deck, and I will do this for all of the problem decks, as I will call them. And it's Lysandra Trundle, and essentially this has obviously become a bit of a problem because of Lysandra and the Watcher combo, and it's been in people's craw quite a lot. What does that even mean? I don't know, but it's been a thorn in people's side for a bit of a while now, this kind of deck, because essentially, if you aren't aware, Lysandra, once you summon, the 4 8+ allies this game, which is made somewhat easier due to things like Spectral Matron and Trundle having the Ice Pillars, which then refill your mana, so you can go like Ice Pillar into a Matron, into summoning another Matron, into, playing another one of the 8 mana cost cards, and then you've just got, the Watcher is online. Well done. And then all you have to do is attack and you've won the game. Essentially, this is a problem because particularly if you're playing any sort of other control deck than this, or any sort of slow deck, you kind of can't win because they'll just pretty much always do this quicker than you can. Like if you're another control deck, this is a deck that can win just much faster than you, and that obviously doesn't feel good a lot of the time. And obviously their win condition against control is pretty big and pretty nuts, and against like aggro and stuff as well. Like Lysandra giving your Nexus tough kind of is a game over and a game ender as well. So this deck can essentially, it's one of those decks that just like is oppressive. It's oppressive because against certain decks you just feel like you can't win, and that's never really that's when a deck becomes a problem. And this isn't even listed as like a top tier deck on Mobalytics, which I think most people would agree with, but it's just that it's oppressive to certain decks, and that is really why we're here. So how on earth do you nerf this? Obviously, the main problem is like the Watcher. This is what we're here for. The strength of the deck, as I just mentioned, isn't really the problem. It's just the Watcher and the whole combo of the deck. So how do we fix it? Well, you have a bunch of different options, right? You can nerf Lysandra, because Lysandra is the only way you can get the Watcher. You could nerf the Watcher itself. You could potentially nerf Trundle if you wanted to, and the Ice Pillars. If you wanted to go down that route. Or you could nerf Spectral Matron. Now, Matron and Lysandra have been sort of the main targets of a lot of people's suggestions, and there have been a lot of suggestions on this topic. But here's my sort of idea about this whole thing. If you want to nerf a card, nerf that card. This is something that I've always sort of thought, but people don't seem to share this belief for whatever reason. But I've always thought if you want to nerf a particular card, nerf that card. We've seen it with Go Hard as well, where people in that old Go Hard deck, people were calling a nerf for Zap Sprayfin, because it was the card that always drew you Go Hard. But no, Zap Sprayfin wasn't the problem. The problem was Go Hard. You nerf Go Hard, and then you have a solution. We saw the same with Twisted Fate, where people kept making these excuses. Twisted Fate doesn't need a nerf. Nerf all these other cards in this deck. Don't touch Twisted Fate. No, Twisted Fate was a problematic card. You nerf Twisted Fate. you know, things get better. This is, you can't tackle something indirectly because you don't know that something else might just be there that synergizes just as well, but people were just too lazy to find it before. So if you want to tackle the Watcher, don't hit Spectral Matron. I know that Matron Cytherea is also a deck that some people complain about, but I don't think it's nearly as bad or warrants a nerf really at all. So don't touch Spectral Matron in my personal opinion. I don't think it's a problem card. I think a lot of people think that as soon as an 8 mana plus follower is good, everyone calls for nerfs instantly to it, and I think that this is a mistake that the devs have made, where cards like Captain Farron and Riptide Rex, and Spectral Matron might become another case of it, or Leviathan. This is the power level that these cards should be. The problem is there aren't enough of them. That's the real issue, that there isn't enough of these big units that are sort of worth something. And so I would say, just leave the good ones alone and buff the not good ones, would be my suggestion, rather than the other way around. So anyway, I would nerf Lysandra, and a lot of people have had suggestions for this, but one that I particularly liked was BBG's, Bruised by God, the Runeterra stream, who suggested that Lysandra should have to see these allies being summoned to level up, and that would obviously be a big sort of boon, because you have to level Lysandra up to get the Watcher, and so that means that essentially, Lysandra would have to be on the board whilst you're summoning these units, and that would be a big deal because it would allow other control decks to just kill Lysandra, and then Lysandra can't get the Watcher, and so it would give them a gateway. Whereas currently, what's happening is you can level up Lysandra beforehand and then just play Lysandra and you'll get the Watcher, which is obviously a bit of a problem because there's no way for other control decks to stop that. But if Lysandra had to see those allies be played, then there would be a way of stopping that. And it does make a lot of sense as well, because you can just wait, you can just wait to play Lysandra on turn 7 and then, do your combo on turn 8 to level her up. It's not like the biggest deal in the world, but against other hard control decks, you'd hope that they, by turn 7, could have an answer for something with 4 health. So that's kind of the whole idea and point behind that nerf, is that it allows other control decks to have a chance. I would also slightly change the Watcher as well. I would make this like a skill that goes on the stack as it attacks. My reasoning for that is that it just allows, if you have Deny or you have Rite of Negation, it just allows you like a, those regions like a slight out, it makes it a tiny bit weaker, which, I think it would be a good thing as well. So by doing this, you essentially take this deck from being somewhat oppressive to other control decks into being like a, a decent control option, but others can definitely see more play, and that is kind of the whole goal of these nerfs, I think, because the power level of this deck isn't necessarily the issue. It's just about trying to stop this combo from being oppressive, and I think that by making Lysandra an I've seen effect, it would do that quite well. So that's personally what I would do. On to our next deck, and this one has baffled me quite a while because apparently no one else seems to be calling for a nerf to this card, which again surprises me a lot, because this champion maybe has been a top 5 champion for the entire history of the game, or for a very long time at least, and that is Draven. I just don't understand why people haven't called for nerfs to Draven. I understand that he's never been like, he's never maybe been the best champion in the game, right? A Draven deck has rarely been like clear number 1. It's never been oppressive. He's always existed in that sort of nice space. But that, to me, does not mean that you should forego nerfs. I think the best way to balance this game is to have an ebb and flow, a rise and fall. Champions and decks come in, they get nerfed, they come down for a couple months or whatever, you bring them back up. It's kind of what I'm hoping they do with Aphelios, to be honest. Like Aphelios was king for a bit, now obviously he's seeing no play at all, blah blah blah. And I hope that, they buff him in some way, not make the moon weapons 2 mana or whatever, but, buff him back again just a little bit, so that again, people are like, oh, Aphelios is back, oh, and you get this sort of rise and fall and new things coming about, and just keep the game fresh, right? But I think that Draven has existed, in the top tables now for just too long, that it's about time that, even with a small nerf, because as soon as you nerf something, people just feel worse about playing it, even if it's still good. And so even with a small nerf to Draven, you could probably affect the play rate quite significantly, and that to me would be like a win. And so personally, I would just take away the spinning X on a summoned, and just make it so that he has to strike to get a spinning X, which is a fairly big nerf, I guess. It is a nerf, like, no one's gonna go like, oh yeah, no, Draven's the exact same. It will be felt, but it wouldn't kill the card. I don't think Draven would become unplayable. But I think that would just be quite a simple change that would just, again, create this ebb and flow of, okay, Draven maybe will go away for a bit, and then we can maybe bring him back, and just, it would be better for the game, because like discard aggro and Ezreal Draven now have kind of been good decks for a long time, and so I just think, it would be a nice change. It would be nice to see a little change in that way. So that's kind of what I hope they do. And as I say, I haven't really heard anyone else calling for nerfs to Draven, probably because he doesn't feel like terrible to play against. But in my mind, that doesn't matter. Like, in my mind, I just want to see this new meta. The idea of any balance patch to me would be, you're gonna take the 3 to 4 best decks. They're all gonna go down. You're gonna have 3 to 4 new decks come about from buffs or from different things coming up. That hopefully creates a new fresh meta that everyone can enjoy. That would be my hope, and I think by nerfing Draven you do create that, because if you don't touch this deck at all, well then this will just be the best deck. If you touch all the other ones but not Ezreal Draven, then yeah, this will probably be the best deck, right? So that is what I would change. And so now on to Nasus Thresh, a deck that obviously received nerfs, but clearly it wasn't enough in the nerfs that it got, which is probably just a more like of an example of how crazy this deck was beforehand. Because normally, like, these nerfs, like, if a deck does get nerfed, normally like people just stop playing it because it feels bad, but this one was so good that like people just kept playing it. But it's really quite funny when you go through the list of all these cards, because I've seen people call for nerfs on like most of these cards. Butcher, yes. Rite of Calling, yes. Bakai Reaper, yes. Doomkeeper, yes. Wings on the Wave, maybe not so much, but it's only a one-off. Cursekeeper, yes. Fading Icon and Glimpse and Vial, maybe not. And Black Spear. Blight Caretaker has been nerfed, but still, some people don't think that's enough. Merciless Hunter, definitely yes. Rite of Negation, probably yes. Spirit Leech, maybe not as much, but I think, if they did nerf this card, I don't think people would be upset. And then, maybe even Nasus and Thresh themselves, and definitely Atrocity as well. So, you can go through a lot of this list, and people are like, this is how you need to change it. You need to change this and that. And obviously, I think you probably only really need to hit like a couple cards in a meaningful way. And then you'll probably end up being fine, right? And I think that those cards, in my opinion, are obviously Doomkeeper. This card is not, as soon as I saw this card, I said that this card was like the craziest card in the game. Craziest one drop in the game, I should say. And I stick by it. Honestly, you could make a case that this is the best card in the game. I don't think it's hyperbole. I think that there is a case to be made that this is the best card in the game. Just because it's just so much value. Offensively, defensively, pretty much at any point in the game. Only 1 mana. Like, it's just so good. Yeah, how do you change it? Well, basically you just change the stats. I think you could make it, you can sort of go one of two ways. You can go, let's just change the card a bit and make it a 1/2, which has always felt like a much worse stat line in this game than a 2/1, just because kind of how the game works. So you could make it a 1/2, which I think would be a fine change, or you could just go the straight, let's just make it a 1/1 kind of route. Either way, I'm sort of fine with it. I guess if you wanted to keep Shurima somewhat relevant, which they probably do, being a 1/2 would probably make the most sense. And I think that would be an effective change. That would keep the card probably still pretty good, but probably would feel worse. And obviously can then only push 3 damage rather than the 4, which, is kind of more in line with other cards, like Legion Rearguard, for instance. So that I think overall would be a better change to Doomkeeper as a whole. And I think it's probably a change that they will make. I'd be surprised if they didn't nerf Doomkeeper, in my honest opinion. But the next obvious one, of course, is Merciless Hunter as well. This card, everyone knows, was crazy, right? Again, this is one where as soon as everyone looked at it, everyone went, well, that's an absolutely crazy card. Why on earth did they make this so good? And, they've said in the past that you know, sometimes they do just push cards on purpose that they know are probably way too good, but it's to try and, you know, add some sort of influence to something that maybe they worry won't work. You know, they've said this in the past with like Grizzled Ranger and Loyal Badger Bear when that came out. You know, both of those cards had an extra attack for if you didn't realize. So Grizzled Ranger was a 4/1 that summoned a 4/4. Which was insane. Yes, it was. And they've admitted that, yeah, they knew the card was insane. You know, these people aren't idiots. They know, you know, they've played with them. They've tested these cards themselves. I'm sure that they are aware that these cards are good. And Merciless Hunter, I'm sure, fits into that category. But I think, you know, I've said this before, and I said this in one of my buff videos about, like, it'd be better if they, like, buffed a card like Scythe Scout, which is another 3-mana card in Shurima, and brought Merciless Hunter down. So that essentially you had 2 good 3-drop options in Shurima rather than like one crazy one and the rest are unplayable. And I think that that's what they should do. And so how do you hit Merciless Hunter? Well, most people have suggested making it a 3/3. You could also make it a 4/2. I think, again, this is just one of those stat changes. Either of which I'm fine with, I guess. I don't really have any preference, I suppose. Like a 4/2 probably is worse, I guess. Maybe. Is that worse with its effect? I don't know. That's an interesting one. What is worse for Merciless Hunter? Normally you'd say being a 4/2 is worth, but the fact that it grants vulnerable to something means that this could trade up better if it has 4 attacks. So maybe being a 3/3 is worse for this card. So that's probably the way I'd go with it. And then just, you know, see how it does and go from there, I guess. It will still be a strong card, but you know, not insane maybe. But then if we look at the rest of the deck, you know, I do want to hit one more card, but which one will it be? It's not a trusty, I can tell you that. It is Cursed Keeper. I think that this is a... Cursed Keeper, I think, is like a crucial card in this deck. I think, like, if you look at the cards that are sort of, like, crucial to the deck, like, really integral to the deck, I think that Cursed Keeper might be maybe even... You could argue is the most integral card to the deck, because of course there are so many ways of killing Cursed Keeper, and the value that you get from it, it just becomes insane. And I think, you know, Shadow Isles has always been good. It's kind of the only region, really, that's always been pretty good. Most other regions have kind of come and gone, and, you know, they have a rise and fall to them. But Shadow Isles' rise was very early on in the game, and they nerfed Shadow Isles heavily, but then it was still good because it was that insane at the start. And Escaped Abomination used to be a 4/4, but I think now it's probably the time to make it a 3/3. And I think that that would be, again, a healthy change. And I think in combination with enough to Doomkeeper, Cursekeeper, and Merciless Hunter, that I think that this deck will then fade from tier 1 play, maybe still be tier 2, but I think that that's the goal, right? You kind of want this deck to still be okay, still fine, but still, you know, but go away from, you know, being in a top tier of the game. And I think that that would do it, and that you would probably end up with a pretty good overall. You know, most decks can't survive 5 nerfs. You know, it would be impressive if this list could. I'd be surprised if it could, and I do doubt that it would survive all those nerfs in combination. It definitely wouldn't feel as good, I don't think. And so I think that then you'd have a fixed deck. And last but definitely not least, we come to the elephant in the room, and that is Azir Irelia. Now, of course, we've already talked about Doomkeeper, and so obviously any Doomkeeper nerf would also hit this deck, which would be nice. So, you know, that's one off the list. Tick that one off. And again, you know, you've seen a lot of different ideas and exactly what needs a nerf and which cards and etc, etc, etc. I think there's some obvious ones, but let's dive into it. So, what are the problems with this deck? Well, the fact that it can attack all the time, and I think the first things first, there is a problem with Blade Dance as a mechanic. I don't think that that is sacrilegious to say, or, you know, or most people would even disagree with that. I think that most people can agree that in combination with Azir and Emperor's Dice and all of that, that there is a clear problem in the fact that it just feels distracting. It feels like you're always defending. You know, always feels like you're on the back foot, and it never feels like you had a chance to play the game. It always felt like, let's hope and pray they don't have more Blade Dance in hand, which they probably do, and that's why it feels bad, right? So how do we fix Blade Dance? And I think that this is really the crucial part to this. is how they try and fix that. You could always, just nerf these cards so that this is like, for instance, a 1/1, or, Blossoming Blade becomes like a 2/2 or something. But I don't really think that that is the main issue. I think the main issue is the actual Blade Dance mechanic itself. And so what I would like to see is on these units that do Blade Dance, and I know that, what was Mogwai's suggestion? Something about like only being able to do it when you have the attack token. I think that that's a really bad suggestion. I really don't agree with that at all. The idea that you'll just be stuck with these cards in your hand that you can only play on certain turns, I mean, one, it doesn't seem to make much sense. And like, it just seems like such an illogical thing. Like, why? Why are you making me do that? But either way, and two, I think it would just feel bad to play as the player of this deck. It would definitely make it a lot worse. Don't get me wrong. If you want to kill the deck, then that's fine. Yeah, go for that. But I think that a better solution would be to make Blade Dance a skill on the units. And you might think, what is that doing? Well, it's actually doing quite a bit. Because, for instance, if you make this a skill, so you play Ribbon Dancer, and it puts up a little skill that you're about to Blade Dance 1. First and foremost, there is the psychological effect of the fact that you get to pause and press OK before it happens. Now, at the moment, what's happening is you're just getting bombarded as soon as they play it, and it's like, oh, they're attacking again. Oh, they're attacking again. But now, you get that psychological breath of, I get to decide when when I get to see these things coming at me, which isn't anything to do with balance, but it just as a psychological thing, I think that it would help actually quite a bit. But more importantly, perhaps, is that if this is a skill, you get a chance to react by trying to get rid of units like Azir. You can potentially try and kill Emperor's Dice. A Sparring Student, for instance, if you played a Ribbon Dancer, would only be a 2/2 at that point, so you could kill a Sparring Student before, they go off on a massive... Before Sparring Student becomes massive, you get a chance to kill it if you want as well. And I think in combination, you can also deny it and Rite of Negation as well, so there's extra options there. I think in combination, that is a change that seems small, but I think would make quite a big difference. And I think in combination with other nerfs that I'm about to suggest, it would be enough to potentially, like, reduce the ability of this deck by quite a significant amount. But as I say, this wouldn't be the only change that I would make. Of course, I would change Azir as well. Azir needs to come down in health. I think most people say make him a 1/4. I tend to agree. Seems like a pretty easy change, and, just make him killable. Make him much more available to kill in those early rounds. And, we'll go from there. We'll probably be fine from there. But there are other things that I would like to suggest as well, not just these. And that is, of course, the change to Inspiring Marshal. Anytime, and I'm surprised they haven't learnt this yet, but literally anytime a 5-mana card with 6 health that has a good ability has come out, it always gets nerfed. Way back in the day, Avaros and Hearthguard was a 5/6. It got nerfed. Then, of course, we got Trundle. That got nerfed. When Jack the Winner the first time I saw Jack the Winner, which was a 5/6 back in the day, I literally said the card will get nerfed. I guarantee it'll get nerfed, was my first reaction. And someone in the comments was like, you can't call for nerfs that haven't come out. Well, it's because a 5-mana card with 6 health with a good ability is too good, because nothing can kill it for quite some time. There just aren't many 6 attack units that are good in this game. Like, the game breaks out at 5. There are a lot of 5 attack units, and they've even pushed that even further more recently with, the 5 attack thing within Shurima and Noxus. But 6, there is something about 6 that there just isn't a lot of 6 attack units that are good, that come down early enough. Like, you have to wait a while before things can trade into 6 health. And so, Inspiring Marshal needs to come down to 5 health. Pretty much it's that simple, I think. And yeah, so far we've got nerf to Doomkeeper, we've got nerf to Blade Dance as a whole kind of mechanic, we got a nerf to Azir, and we got a nerf to Inspiring Marshal. So we're hitting like 4 different things, which is quite a lot, and I know that some of you might not think that's enough, but I honestly think it is. Now, that might surprise some of you, because I know a lot of people have said you have to nerf Sparring Student and you have to nerf Emperor's Dice, and I'm going to explain to you why you do not do this, in my personal opinion. And instead of nerfing those cards, I'd probably suggest a nerf to Shapestone before those, to be honest. And that is, let me explain. Sparring Student is not a problematic card. Sparring Student is a synergistic card that has found the perfect deck for it. And this card has existed since the very early game, but has never seen play before. And so by trying to nerf this card in some way, you're attacking the wrong things. Doomkeeper is a problematic card because it is just overall good. It's just really good. In every deck, Doomkeeper is good. In any Shurima deck, you can warrant playing Doomkeeper because it's really good. Sparring Student fits in one deck. Now the ideal in my mind is that that's a good thing. That if you have decks that are synergistic at the top, that's good. You don't want generic decks because then you just come against different flavors of the same thing constantly and every game will be the same. What you want is synergistic decks to be good. Discard Aggro is another good example of this, where cards like Vision and Jury Rig don't see play, or Flame Chompers, they don't see play anywhere else. You wouldn't nerf those cards because they're good within that deck. Because it's better for you if you do see a bunch of different things. Now, right now, there's a lot of Azir Irelia because the deck is way too overtuned. But if it comes back down, which it hopefully will, hopefully, you won't see as much Sparring Student. And I can guarantee you won't feel nearly as bad about Sparring Student. And so you'd just be hitting a card for no reason, in my personal opinion. Empress Dice fits in a similar sort of vein, but slightly different. And that is, this game is built around champions. And if you make this 3 mana, you kill Azir. This card is important for Azir. This is like a really important card. And it's clearly meant, I mean, you know, obviously this is meant to synergize with Azir. But it's a really important card for Azir as a whole. Because of its effect, and you know, before Azirelia, again, this card existed without people, you know, saying that this was a problematic card. It's a strong card, but that's what Azir needs. You know, Azir, I want to nerf Azir himself and bring down his health, but I don't want to kill Azir. I don't want to never play against Azir again. Azir, I quite like as a champion personally. He's a champion that, as you can see, I've played quite a bit of, and so I want to keep Azir around. And so to me, you have to keep a card like Empress Dice around. Now, if you don't think I've gone far enough with these nerfs, you could potentially hit Irelia on her own. Personally, I don't think like it's really necessary. Maybe you could hit like Blade Surge in some sort of weird way, you know, make it 1 mana or something, or you know, maybe you could hit, I don't know. I really don't know. You know, you could chain, well, how would you change Flawless Duet to not be Blade Dance 2? Like it says Duet. But yeah, I'd probably hit Blade Surge and make it like 1 mana if that's what you wanted to do. I don't necessarily think that would need to be the case. Or you could hit Lead and Follow in a certain way. You know, you could make this 3 mana if you really want to. This, to me, you know, feels more like a card that is more fine to hit than these other cards. I mean, Greenglade Duo is another one that I wouldn't like. It's any card with elusive on you can nerf. I'm perfectly fine with that. Yeah, I think that those changes would be enough. I really do think that those changes would be enough. And I know that some of you won't think that that is the case, but I think you'd be surprised that when you nerf like 4 to 5 things in a deck, normally something else comes along and is better than that thing. Even if it's just psychologically, even if again, you know, the deck is still good. You nerf it. If they come up with 5 balance changes on that list, people are just gonna assume, well, it can't be that good anymore, right? Someone will try it out, of course, but I really do think that the biggest change is changing Blade Dance to a skill. I really do think that would fix a lot of the problems with this deck. I really do. I think that the ability to be able to pick off Azir, or, you know, destroy Emperor's Dice, or kill Sparring Student before it gets big. Obviously, the Blade Dance still goes off, but then you don't get the extra attacking Sand Soldiers. You don't get you know, a Sparring Student that becomes, you know, an 8/8 or a 9/9 or whatever. You don't get, yeah, more Sand Soldiers and more summons and all of that. And I think that, and you would get a chance to breathe as well. I think that that's the big change, and in combination with like all those other nerfs as well, that this deck would probably go away, and yeah, we could enjoy our lives. But again, I'm not here to kill the deck. I don't think the devs are either. I think the devs want Azir and Irelia to be good. They're 2 popular characters as far as I can tell in League. You know, lore and history and stuff like that. So they probably, you know, want that to be pushed as well because they want to go, hey, League of Legends people, I know that you're an Irelia main. Irelia is good. Like, come and play our game. You know, that's what they want. Hey, a lot of people play Azir or whatever. I don't know if they do, but Azir is popular. Come and play our game. That's obviously what they want, and so I think that the idea should be to nerf this deck so that it becomes like a low to mid tier 2 deck rather than thinking this deck needs to die. I never want to play against it again. So that's my goal, and I think that those changes would do it. So with that said, that is all the nerfs. That's everything. Everything. So if Riot just hire me again to fix your game, and I will do it. I will do it. Not for free. I will need some payment. Although, if you want to just take these changes and do that on your own, that's fine. I won't even take credit. I won't sue you or anything. Just take them. They are yours. Take them. But consider hiring me. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. I've been Chris. Have a really nice day. And as I say, it's about the cards, identifying the cards. It's not about the changes necessarily. We can disagree on that. But with that said, thank you so much for watching and have a really nice day. Big balance patch tomorrow. Pray to the gods. Pray to the Runeterra gods. Please be a good balance patch. Please.